Thank you. All right. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the planet or outer space. We have no idea nowadays. So thank you so much for tuning in. My name is Barbie Layton, and I am so overjoyed to have Christopher Lembke from the Alchemy Experience. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you very much for having me. It's awesome being back at the Best You and with you, Barbie. So I've been looking forward to this one.
Absolutely. So yesterday, Christopher was the host with the most. So he triple dipped yesterday. He was the host from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. in the Master Mentors and Influencers room, where he had some brilliant discourses with Hugh Layton, I think his name was.
Yeah.
And then there was also, he was on the red carpet in the morning, which was crack of the morning for me, but in the middle of the afternoon for him.
20 past 2 my time.
Yes. And then he also had a bonus talk, 45 minutes, talking about passion projects and being able to talk about conscious business. So Christopher and I are both premium coachees in the brilliant inaugural first ever Visions Premium Coaching for Mind Valley. And one of the things that's amazing about that is in some ways it's a beta testing tank for what Vision calls thought leaders. So he has bequeathed that title to us, which is a super cool thing to have. And there's been this amazing momentum and a lot of support that's happened in the last 6 months or so, just as far as like the momentum happening in 2021. So Christopher joined in November and has become an integral part of the group and has had some amazing postings on Vision's brand new Insights forum, so insights.mindvalley.com. So Christopher's had multiple amazing business posts about different things. He also launched a podcast, The Alchemy Experience, in January, and I was one of the featured guest speakers for an episode called Bennett Like Barbie. And he also has had a weekly podcast with group members of people that come from the public to discuss different topics that he masterfully enables people to kind of facilitate a conversation. And the thing that's been so amazing about all of those talks is that they've been incredibly revelatory. So every single week, I think that Christopher, being a very mindful person that meditates on a daily basis, I know that I'm sure he puts intentionality that beautiful things come forward in those weekly podcasts. And every single week, it does not disappoint. There's always some sort of a breakthrough that somebody on the group has, some sort of an aha moment, an ability to be able to see a topic in a different way. And these are people that come from all over the world to be able to come to Christopher's podcast. And it's actually gaining in popularity. He also hosts a psychometry class on Mondays that are free to the public. He also has a meditation class on Tuesdays, which are also free to the public. So he has so many meditations on his website, and there are so many things that he has been doing in order to be able to uplift the collective consciousness. But right now, the best part is that he's probably maybe less than 10% even launched as to all the things he's planning on doing on a global level to be able to uplift the planet and help the frequency. So I'm super grateful that we partnered up on a lot of different projects. We also both just got accepted as research fellows for the Green Light Ferrazzi Foundation with Keith Ferrazzi, which is an incredibly amazing honor. So having the opportunity to be able to work in these amazing capacities with world-class leaders has been phenomenal. So thank you, Christopher, for being here today. I know that I've just been in awe watching you grow, your progress, the humility that you have that you bring to it, but just allowing yourself to expand in all this amazing energy. So kudos to you.
Thank you, Barbie. And time to breathe now, Barbie. Yeah, no, it's awesome to be here. And I've been in awe of the progress that you made yourself last year. It was just mind-boggling to me. And, as a analytical person, I have a business background, and I've, in my previous life, if you like, in this lifetime, mixing up the concepts here, but it's all about numbers and analyzing and looking at market strategies and all of these things. So even though I'm becoming more in balance between my left and right brains, I still look at things, even if it's metaphysical, I look at it with an analytical mind frame or perspective and try to ascertain, where does it come from? How does it work? I do accept that it is what it is, but at the same time, I'm very curious on, when I was a kid, my parents or my mother really hated giving me electronics because I would use them for about a week and then I start picking them apart and basically not put them back together. And so it was like spare parts. Uh, but I've always been very intrigued to figure out how things work. So now, coming of age in terms of understanding more the metaphysical side and my own self, as it were, uh, that kind of comes with me to try and pick apart, who am I and where do I come from? All of these things, and it's a little bit of a different approach to things than people that may have grown up with a spiritual side that I take.
Well, and I'd love to know. So before we start talking about kind of your conscious business proposal, because I think a lot of
Mhm.
that is going to be something that does revolutionize the business, like just the whole climate, because so many things are ripe for changing. That whole authority top down, having the big boss that just kind of puts the hammer down on people. I don't think that's really going to be the norm in the next 21st century, and that's something that Keith Ferrazzi has been really, really positive about talking about, and something that you've already pre-Mind Valley, pre-taking any of this personal growth stuff on, you were already writing about those things in advance. So, I mean, obviously you were tapping into the collective consciousness on your own, but I'd really like for the audience members to kind of know the fact that for you, a lot of this is really, really new. This isn't something of where you kind of like were some hippie on an ashram with long hair and smoking joints all over the place, just doing a
I wish.
commune, like milking goats, and making cheese. Like this wasn't your journey. You're a very like, traditional person who pretty much has now made this complete left turn. And I think that's an important thing, because by your allowing that story to be brought forward for other people, you also inspire that guy that feels like he's somehow shackled in his corporate, attire, his corporate world, his corporate everything that he has to kind of fit into. And then being the fact that this is something that was an epiphany for you, not in some ways totally a gentle situation, but having this transformation for you is that you took a completely different left turn, but you also had to take a leap of faith that you could trust that this was real. And because of that, now you're in this place of where you're positioned to do all these amazing things based on your trust and your faith. So I'd love for the audience just to hear, what was that like for you in the last 4 to 5 years of where you went from this totally different person, or, the Japanese used to call those salary man, right? A salary
Mhm.
man was a guy who he had a path and he just kept doing that thing. So I kind of get that energy that you were a salary man, but then all of a sudden you were like, whoosh. So please
Yeah,
extrapolate.
yeah, no, absolutely. Uh, in many respects, I was a salaryman in my mindset. I've in my 25, well, coming up on 30 years of being in the business world, I've spent I spent about 5 years in employment. Other than that, I've been entrepreneur or self-employed. But even those 5 years, I was in an entrepreneurial kind of situation where I was traveling salesman. I managed my territory. I went into the office once a week. So this whole idea of having authority never really suited me. Um, I didn't really respond well to it. So yeah, and I have a sense that my journey was supposed to begin in 2002, 2003, something like that. But because of some choices I made at that point, because of beautiful free will, uh, I kind of closed the door on the opportunity of starting my journey then. So then fast forward 13, 14 years, I suppose the universe had enough and said, okay, enough fooling around now. It's time for you to actually get going with what you're supposed to here to do. Um, so I had, what is it, March 31st, 5:31 in the afternoon. I get bum rushed by a light beam,
Mm.
and literally I see this thing coming corner of my eye. I look at it, and it's 5 feet tall, blue shoulders, and then just light all over it. And yeah, as many often times these things happen from a cataclysmic situation in my own life. I just instigated a separation, and you know, the future was quite a white canvas, right? So I was quite open for anything to come into my life. So this was an opportunity, and yeah. So at that point, I quite literally just sat down and started meditating, and started following my own internal guidance, or higher guidance, or guidance from spirit guides, or whatever you want to refer to it as. And it was a very interesting period. I was terribly ungrounded. It was really not until about a year ago that I started feeling somewhat grounded. So about almost 3 years of complete ungroundedness. And but it was pretty cool because I would realize things in my meditation, and then I would go and research it on the internet, and I'd find exactly, okay, this is how it's. I knew these things internal, so like energy healing. It was something I did that to myself because I learned it by looking into my own existence, as you like, if you like. And so that gave me the trust to look at to have faith. So because I knew this information was inside me, so I just had to unlock door after door after door after door. And in the beginning, I was very impatient. I was like, "This got to be quicker," and I was very much put on a, shall we say, a fast track course on spirituality and all of those things, because it didn't really exist in my life previously. My ex-wife, she would go to mediums and stuff, and I believed in it. I thought that there was substance to it, but I thought it was a waste of money. Why go to a psychic? It's not really point. The future is going to happen whether we go to a psychic or not. Not understanding that we can actually have co-create with the universe. So it was, and I grew up in a house where the basement's from like 12th, 13th century monastery. So we did have an extra a couple of families living in the house that we couldn't see. There was a lot of crap going on, shall we say. And I always felt followed. I always felt watched in that house, and I could feel these energies around me, and I could feel what they looked like. And this was in my teens, a very uncomfortable way to live. But then I moved away from that house, and I was like, oh, okay, yeah, that's fine. And then didn't pay much attention to it. I kind of shut it down. But that all came rushing back, obviously. So I describe it usually, if anyone is familiar with the Spanish tradition of paseo, of after or in the early evening hours, the Spaniards tend to go for a stroll in the center of town on the paseo, and dar un paseo. So to basically have a promenade, if you like. So I felt like I was in a tent without sides, and this was my house, and people just walk in and out of this tent because there were no sides. Basically, there were no boundaries. I had no spiritual boundaries. So I had basically energies coming and going just as they pleased, and things were very confusing at that time. And once I started getting a little bit grounded, and I started building up the spiritual boundaries, that's when I started to really be able to tap into things and understand how things work. And so that essentially brings us to today. I mean, of course, there's a lot of things on the road in terms of building up or getting the walls of this tent and, putting up a sign saying, if you want to come in, you need to do this, and all of those things. But yeah, I did. I became a Reiki practitioner a few years ago, and that was part of the process of getting to know my own energy. Then I've done quite a few mediumship trainings to connect with the spirit and connect with my own spirit guides. And these kind of trainings and, shall we say, small courses that are all slotting into what I do today in terms of coaching and business consulting and meditation coaching and teaching.
Well, all of that is definitely fascinating. And I have a really interesting question. So, if you felt that your spiritual awakening was technically, you have this fathoming that it should have been around 2002, 2003, what would you say to that version of yourself now that resisted all of that and wasn't willing to go along with the program?
Good question. I think the reason I chose something else was because I didn't have my boundaries all in order. I didn't have the boundaries down in my physical world to say, this is what I want to do. And if you want to join me on this journey, you're welcome to. But if you don't, that's okay as well. So I think I would go back and say, listen, you have your journey, other people have their journeys, and you have to accept that. I would basically coach myself like I'm coaching people today. It's like, have compassion and accept everybody for what they are, and then forgive them and then show gratitude for the lessons that you took from it. That's why I coach. So that is what I would tell myself at that point. Yeah. But at the same time, everything has come to a pinnacle. So it's always perfect timing. The stuff I learned in the 13, 14 years that I was very much sleepwalking, I bring all of that with me into where I am today. So it's all good, as they say, over by where you're at.
Well, and as you were saying, I mean, ultimately, if 2016 was kind of the time where your spirit guides finally said enough, I think the thing that is an interesting part of that is that people want to think about, like everything happens for a reason, and there's timing. So I think you have different shots. I know, like in my experience, I found that people have 5 exit point opportunities. So a lot of people who have near death experiences, it's like you have those 5 times in your life where you can just dip out if it's just a little too intense, and you're like, okay, well, here's a car crash, or here's a suicide attempt, or here's a surgery that went wrong, etc. You've got these opportunities, and then your soul has kind of this little powwow and says, okay, are we done? No, we still have things to do. So you come back in the body, and then you come back and you fulfill your mission. But it's still an interesting thing, because if you look at 2002 to 2016, it's still a 14-year period. But in the meantime, during that time, you also ended up having, beautiful children, and you had all these other experiences too. So it's kind of like, in some ways, had you made that decision, you wouldn't have been a father in many ways, or you wouldn't have done this or done that. And just like that movie, The Adjustment Bureau, I think is such a beautiful movie, because it just shows like all these like different, sections of seconds of where, you get that coffee spilled on you or something else happens, but it's all kind of this maneuvering. But ultimately, it's your guides on the other side saying like, I really hope they figure this out this time. I really hope that they get the message this time. And like, can you just come along with the program? We know you can do this, etc. So I know you talk about a lot about resistance and, surrender and acceptance and forgiveness and compassion. So those are all those things of where, being in the gratitude of like, hey, I'm in touch with my spirit guides and they're actually giving me guidance. So let's try to find that congruency and alignment so that then you can do that. And then you see all this amazing stuff happening in your life now. So it's like, in some ways, bringing all that 5D reality is now showing you that you can prove to your analytical mind, see, if I follow my inner guidance, it's going to happen in the physical. But it's almost like your analytical mind needed to see that to tell you all this other stuff is rubbish. It's all a bunch of crap. This isn't real. You're just doing pipe dreams. But then all of a sudden you're like, oh yeah, well, I just got accepted as a research fellow. Oh yeah, well, I'm working on Keith Ferrazzi's, I'm collaborating with Barbie on their next book. Oh yeah, I just got asked to be a host, and did a speaking engagement, and I was on the red carpet, and I'm going to be on a TV show, and I'm doing this, and I'm getting more clients. It's like all this exciting stuff in the sense of where you're they've got that proverbial angel and devil that's just always kind of chattering, and it's like,
Mhm.
I feel like you're putting all of those together and aligning them to the point of where now, from that perspective, your boundaries are allowing you to pick from this lofty place rather than one of like your brain going like, well, that doesn't make sense.
Well, and I think there are, it's a process. You can't just jump to it. It's a process that is going, you have to allow it to happen. That's where the patience element comes in. You can't
Correct.
just snap your fingers and expect your consciousness or your, whatever you present to the external world to just accept what you tell it to accept, because it won't.
True.
It's going to accept it when it's ready to do so. So, when I met my first spirit guide back in, this must have been August of 2016, I sat down with them in meditation and had a chat, and I asked for a name, first name, last name, like what, when he was last incarnated, um, and then I asked for a place of birth and place of death. So still this, I have to be able to verify, right? So
Sure.
yeah, I went onto Google and searched it up, and one search result came up. There was a boy, 1 year old, died after 1 year in Germany, exactly like I was told. And I was like, holy shit, this is amazing. But still, that was pretty solid evidence for most people, and it was for me too. But still, I needed more evidence. So the more evidence we need, the more evidence we're going to get, right? And then the number sequences start, and you start getting the parking spot that you need, and you start getting this, the little bits, and it starts compiling. And I think it's almost, it's like a seesaw in a playground. When you walk across it, it's not moving at all to begin with, and then it moves a little bit, and then you come to the end, and you kind of take that step over, and it goes boom.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then suddenly the floodgates just open, right? And
Yeah.
I suppose that's what's happened since December, really. Well, since you came around. It's all you, Barbie. It's all you.
Hey, I'm happy to be the catalyst for magic happening for people's lives. Like, I accept that. And what you're talking about actually is advanced stuff, because I was used to look at a lot of this kind of spiritual stuff, and it's like there were so many things that I had innate abilities to, but I couldn't control them. So when you've got like, light bulbs that are snapping all over the place and computers breaking and other stuff, you're like, okay, I don't know what the hell to do with that. But by the same
We're going
token,
video going green or something like that.
yeah, but when you have those kind of things, now you have the opportunity. So I think that what you're finding is that incrementally you were having a primer. You were in preschool, then you went to kindergarten, then you went through elementary, and then you get to a point of where you have your high school, and then you have your college, and then finally you get to a point of where you have a PhD in spirituality, and then, oh yeah, I can do the red carpet, and I can host, and I can talk, and I can do it all, and all in one day. And look at you look completely refreshed, and you don't look like you're, like, oh my God, I mean, most normal people, from what you did yesterday, they'd be needing about a 3-day like hiatus to just kind of like chill out. And here you are, like, ready for my interview, ready to go. So, these are the kind of things of,
and I have been in my hypnopsychotherapy class all since 10 o'clock this morning as well.
So that's what I'm saying. So you're stepping into the place of where, yes, in that state of mind that you were in the beginning, all those things are incremental, and then you get a little bit of something. But now it's like literally it's to the point of where the floodgates have started to open. And I loved what Tula was saying prior to us recording this. If we're sitting on the, in the past, I thought to myself that we're sitting in there waiting for the air traffic controller to tell us that our, jet engine is ready to take off. And she's like, nah, you don't need to even get off that plane. You just keep flying and continue on, et cetera, et cetera. Like, we're in a space station instead of having to make some sort of a landing. So all these things become bigger and bigger. So what I'd like to do is segue this into, I see you really being able to revolutionize things with business. And I know you and I have talked about collaborating on that together. I know we've already done some clearing sessions with people together that have been blown away by the power of that. And, we have appointments to do that already in the future too. But I think that I would really love for you to kind of speak to how you see bringing this consciousness in to the corporate space. And you wrote this amazing piece about equality in March 14th, 2019, pre Mind Valley, pre anything. And then I know you posted it on Vision's new private blog format on insights.mindvalley.com. And the article is called Equality Movement in Society Was Going Wrong, which you reposted on 1/13/2021. But I think what's so interesting about this is that your insights and your difference of opinion in that sense, there's nothing negative about them. There's no darkness to it. There's nothing that's a command or a state of must or anything like that. It's not Old Testament tablet, thou shalt type of stuff. Everything is very like open for that kind of opportunity to be able to really have your high performing teams go into what Stephen Kotler calls flow. So I love the fact that all of that is in alignment with 2021 pivoting post COVID. But ultimately, I just want to quote you that you stated, human society is very much set up to celebrate the alpha personality. Fight your way to the top and you're considered to have succeeded in life. Doesn't matter if you're male or female, it's the alpha personality that will be considered successful. The challenge women have succeeding in this type of society is that they tend to not be alpha type personalities. They tend to be more nurturing, caring, compassionate, etc. Whereas males have a greater portion of alpha type personalities in their midst. However, men who are not of the alpha personality do not fare well either in these hierarchies. So it is not just a female issue. It has been famously proclaimed that if women were in charge, there wouldn't be any more wars. And that ultimately, as you were stating, like with someone like Margaret Thatcher, that wasn't the case. And if you have this hyper masculinity or hyper femininity, etc., you can't necessarily legislate a lot of these pieces. So no. What I'd like you to discuss, because I think this is so important, and I think companies will really vibe on this, and it will be something of where your services will be in demand based on this concept, is we've legislated so many things with sexual harassment policies and anger management policies and all these different things because we've labeled certain things in the workforce toxic because people don't want to get sued. I totally understand that. But the average person, a lot of people meet their spouses at work, because if you're spending 18 hours a day there, when do you have time to go meet somebody, like on your way home when you're tired and you're going home to go sleep, like literally. So people, they vibe in different spaces. But I think that this is such a beautiful thing. And especially I love the fact that because you have two daughters, you've really thought about this from the perspective of feminism as an empowering thing as opposed to an exclusionary thing. Because I think for some people that has become almost an exclusionary thing. And this war of women versus men, it doesn't serve us in any way, shape, or form going forward. So I think in conscious business, this is a key concept that I think that you could become like literally a thought leader expert on internationally. And I totally love that. So I'd love for you to speak on that.
Well, thank you, Barbie. And I take your vote of confidence to heart, and I appreciate that. See, I'm learning to take compliments. I appreciate that. And what I tend to do, and this, again, going back to, the analytical side of me, I take things and I pick them apart. So when I look at a problem, I don't look at it from the point of view as, oh, here's the solution, and now we move on. I look at, okay, where does the problem come from? I go to the root of it. I pick it apart and I look for the most simple elements or aspects of the problem to make sure that we can solve it for forever, that we don't need to worry about that problem again. And that's, again, the same thing with, psychotherapy and my coaching. I look at, okay, where does this problem come from? Why do you have these abandonment issues? Let's look at where it comes from. Let's heal that first. And then we don't have to worry about healing the current situation, because you heal everything that leads up to the current situation. So when I look at business, I had to go back and look at society as a whole, um, because what we have in society is really a structure, a hierarchical structure built by men or built by the alpha personality for the alpha personality.
Mhm.
It's appropriated for that type of a personality to thrive. And yes, you know, and we've been doing this for 5, 10, 20,000 years, however many years since we came from the tribal, you know, in the caves and so forth, where the men are typically physically stronger. So we automatically become the ones that hunt and protect. Women are the ones that give birth. You have that privilege. And you can, they are the more nurturing and take care of, you know, the family unit, as it were, to ensure our progression as a species. So it was quite natural that that was, you know, we had this alpha type of hierarchical structure that came about. And, you know, it permeates religion, it permeates how we set up organizations in general, it permeates companies, governments, all of them work the same way. Um, so, but now it's outlived its welcome, as if you like, because we've evolved past that. So now I'm from Sweden originally, so the idea of equality is part of, you know, my upbringing, even
Mhm.
though Sweden is not entirely you know, equal, as it were. There's no equanimity in the society. But so I started looking at it and I started saying, okay, well, if we try to dismantle it from the top down, then we are going to have this immune response from within the system, because the system will always protect itself. Whether you go to a company that is trying to, you know, disrupt the, if you have a disrupting element inside a company, other parts of the company is going to start attacking this disrupting element, because it's trying to change things into a future that we don't yet know or are familiar with. So it's fear based, right? So I started looking at it from the point of view of how society and also the elements of society are structured. And the only way we are going to be able to change the way things work is if we change the mindset of the people. So from the ground up, because
Yes.
all the structures, all the organizations, all the governments, all the religious organizations, the common denominator is people. They're,
Mhm.
they're, they function because of people. If you don't have people supporting it, it's like when you're sitting with uh, you have negative thoughts. The only
Uh-huh.
way for that negative thought to exist is if you give it energy.
Mhm.
Now,
Yep.
apartheid, for example, couldn't exist anymore because people weren't giving it energy. You have and you have Nelson Mandela, and then you have you know, Mahatma Gandhi. These like non-violent, just they just show up and they are the best role model they can be, and that's all the change that's needed. Now,
Mhm.
if you go in and say, like in Sweden, they've tried a few times to say, okay, all the boards on public companies have to have 50% women. What's going to happen is that they're going to scramble because it hasn't been fed through the system yet.
Yep.
They're going to scramble to find 50% women.
Mhm.
Now, those women are, unfortunately, because of these systemic inequalities, are not going to be prepared and primed and qualified to take up those positions.
Right.
So what's going to happen? They're going to fail. They're basically, you set it up to fail to begin with. They're going they're going to fail, and then the system is going to turn around and say, "Yeah, we tried that, and that didn't work. So see, women
Right.
are not equal,
Right.
right?" So you give them, you feed the system, and this is the it's not, the immune system, the immune response is not something that is conscious. It is subconscious in the organism of the organization, because it becomes that collective energy, right? So therefore, we need to change the hearts and minds of the people to say, this is what we want, and if that is what they want, that is what's going to happen, right? So then you don't need to legislate, because businesses will want to pay men and women equally. If we're now looking at a gender specific challenge, but they pay everybody equally. So you have to, and I spoke with Marcus Skinner, a friend of mine, interviewed him for the podcast the other day. He's a very successful entrepreneur. He's biggest supplier of tombstones in Scandinavia. He imports them from China. But like he was saying, we need to make it the opportunity to be moral and ethical. We have to make that profitable. That is going to be part of the change. So we have to, and the only way we're going to do that is if we change the hearts and minds of people to say, or to want people to prefer to buy ethically, and not worry, not prioritizing the cheap fast fashion, for example, because then that is going to come from cotton is not going to be ethically grown, and the people that work in the supply line are not going to be paid enough, etc., etc. So we have to make people, well, not make people, but convince people quite voluntarily that this is what they want, because it's the right thing to do.
Well, and that's something of where I really, anecdotally, there's a Pakistan apparently has some of the best cotton for denim jeans in the world. And so what happens is that, like you were talking about recycling and sustainability, et cetera, the Pakistani people have figured out, and this is brilliant, that they send the 7 for all mankind and the all these like designer jeans that cost $500 to $1,000 for wealthy people to wear them, where they put dirt on them just so it looks like they've actually been outside, et cetera. And then they wear them, and then they recycle them, and then they go to other places. So they just keep getting recycled. Well, the more that you break in the Pakistani denim, the more comfortable and soft it is. Like if you have a really comfortable pair of Levi 501s, the more broken in they are. They're just almost like silk because he felt like the denim. So then all of those Pakistani jeans, they get sold back to the Pakistani people like at dirt poor like prices, because they get them for like $10, because they've already been totally, like they had people who went through and paid like high prices to be able to get them to the point where they come back to them and they're like, yeah, these are suitable for me now that they've been broken in for a year or so. So it's kind of like, almost a funny like sign of recyclability. But what I love about what you're talking about, and honestly, I think that there are definitely some articles in what you were just talking about. In addition to that, I was writing notes, and I think that what you're talking about is it's so fascinating. You're talking about a kill switch that ultimately, and I'm so fascinated right now with artificial intelligence and all the different things of where you can basically automate things, et cetera. And Elon Musk has talked about a lot of that kind of stuff too. And so from that perspective, if you automate things, a lot of people have stated that AI has kill switches built into them, and they will do everything to be able to make sure the system does not falter and it does not fall apart. So you have a disruptor that comes in and tries to shut the mainframe down or whatever it is. That kill switch will activate, and then we'll keep replicating those cells and keep replicating those cells over and over again. I mean, cancer does the exact same thing in the human body. So it's a really fascinating thing in that sense. But I think that for you, when I did the documentary in 2007 at the maximum security prison, I think one of the reasons why it was successful is that we weren't selling a program. We weren't selling a religion. We didn't have a workbook and a worksheet of like, here, if you do this program in 8 to 10 weeks, you will have such and such. And I know you are like me, where you eschew the 5 weeks to millionaire mind. And, you in 5 minutes can clear your blocks from the last 5 lifetimes and like we don't subscribe to that kind of stuff. And our values are very aligned on that kind of stuff. But I think that What you're talking about is the opportunity to come into corporations and systemically from the inside out change the way they do business, but from the perspective of bringing everyone along to a common purpose. So
Hmm.
that actually ties in so beautifully to the next thing that I want you to tell everybody about, because it's brilliant, is your UPP. So that is something that I think that will also transform other things in regards to businesses, because this component here, I mean, I see what you were just talking about being a 3-month consultancy in a corporation. So, let's say you and I collaborated on that. We were brought into Deloitte and they came in and said, well, we've got all these negative managers who are backbiting and it's competitive and they're trying to see who gets better sales and so on and so forth. And having the opportunity to come in and systemically look at all of these different groups as the high performing ones and not, and having them collaborate and take ownership and dominion of being able to like kind of assess where they are, but not from that Harvard MBA perspective, not from the
Hmm.
USC MBA perspective, not from the cutthroat of like it's sales and we need to make sure that this person has a bullseye because they sold this many houses for the real estate and everybody should be like this person because they got this level of sales, et cetera, et cetera. And then everyone else feels like crap because, oh, I only had 2 houses that I sold this month. So I think you have something of where consultant wise, this could be something that you bring in and state to the corporation that within 2 to 3 months, having these opportunities to really have people deep dive and then possibly even have anonymous conversations of where they would be able to speak freely about what are the actual problems. Because unfortunately, I think a lot of people in corporations, they feel like they give feedback, but a lot of it is just kind of like, oh, well, we asked for some consultancies. We asked for people within the organization to give their feedback, but then they didn't really do anything about it. So they acted like they paid attention, but they really just did whatever they thought with the pendulum swing.
Well, and I think the challenge you're going to find if you go in top down with what I was just talking about, you're gonna activate that into that immune response system or the immune response,
Yeah.
uh, because the top layer does not. It's not in their interest to allow non-alpha type personalities in, right?
Correct. Yep.
Because it's basically destroying themselves, right? So yes, being faced with the problem of inequality and so forth, I deconstructed to see where are the challenges. Now, where's the solution? Part of the solution is, I like you say, I'm not someone who goes out and preaches and tells
Mhm.
people that you have to do this or else,
Mhm.
because that's not aligned with, you know, spirit.
Mhm.
That's not what, then you go into duality and negativity, and that's not what it's about. People have to come to the realization in their own time. Now, the challenge is, if you want a company to change, you can't wait for all the people at the bottom to change, because you're talking generations,
Sure.
which is fine. I'm quite patient and ready for that. But there is a solution. And that solution, which I think you were alluding to before, is to go in and talk to the top layers about setting passion oriented goals,
Yes.
or to
Yes.
focus on the ikigai, which is,
Yeah.
what's your passion? What are you good at? What's the market ready? What do people want? And what are people willing to pay for? So once you can find the sweet spot in that, that's called ikigai. Um, and so the once you go in and talk to them about that, talk to them about passion oriented goals, and then it's it's about switching from the revenue based goals to passion oriented goals.
Yeah.
Uh, in traditional organizations and companies, when you have a profit or a revenue based goal, you create this in times of abundance. We can say it works quite all right, but in times of perceived scarcity, you automatically inject fear into the organization, because there's in the perception is that there's not enough money to go around. So
Yeah.
if you have goals saying that, oh, we need to increase revenue by 50% next year, and there, media is saying the market is going down, and the government saying we're in a recession, people are not going to believe it. And they're going to be afraid, if we don't do this, are we going to exist as a company? So you get this culture of fear permeating the entire organization.
Yep.
And when you and this was part of what I was talking about yesterday at 12 o'clock for my talk as well, is that now suddenly you have all of these stakeholders coming into the business trying to get something out of it. Paycheck, profits,
Yes.
better deal,
Yeah.
whatever it may be.
Yeah.
And so you have all these people pulling in their own direction.
Yeah.
So the energy is going out from the business, not coming into it. It's fine when when it's times of perceived abundance, because then people come to the company to make money and to make money for the business or whatever. Then you have it's this illusion of bringing energy to the company, and a revenue-based oriented goal is also something that is finite. So it's going to be next year 50% increase over this year. Now, if you set a passion-oriented goal, say for example, our goal is to manufacture or design and manufacture and supply the customer with ethical, high-level designed fashion, whatever it may be. That's not a goal you can achieve. That's a goal you achieve every single time you put a piece of clothing out there. So it's something you do as opposed to achieving. So now what happens is, whether you're in a state of or perception of abundance or scarcity, you're still able to achieve your goal. So you take the function of the abundance or the scarcity out of the organization. And now all the stakeholders, again, irrespective of the market environment, are bringing something to the company. The energy is going into the company, because we are in a healthy organization. You have a collection of people. If you don't have people in an organization, you don't have an organization. Sure. So the fundamental for an organization is to have people, and they bring an energy with them. So when you get those people together, you have a collective energy. And that collective energy is then, everybody brings that energy in, supporting this passion-oriented goal. Then you get this forward driving motion. Everybody's driving in the same direction. It doesn't matter if you what kind of stakeholder you are, whether you are a low-level employee, quote unquote, a high-level employee, or an investor, supplier, customer, or just a community member where the company exists or have manufacturing facilities. So it's everybody comes together because they believe in this ikigai, or the passionate goal. So you get a movement as opposed to an organization, right?
Well, then I think the other part is that you're also attracting new talent. So when also the buzz happens of where people believe that this is, as I think that you've stated before too, a lot of those people who aren't willing to be a part of that any longer, they're ultimately going to be putting in their, tendering their resignations or moving on within, maybe a couple of years. And then you start to be able to attract top talent that has those things. And for example, even Vishen Lakhiani is a perfect example in his Buddha and the Badass and Be Extraordinary, where he talks about the fact that he doesn't interview people based on their resumes. He wants to look at their MIQs, or their most important questions. And from looking those three things, he can see what kind of a person that they are, as opposed to, what their business goals are exclusively. And from that, you can tell a completely different picture of that person. And it has an opportunity for you to then pull in these beautiful things. So it's like, as you were saying, it's like, this isn't an overnight thing. This is a transitory thing of where it takes probably a good, 3 months at least as the consultancy to bring in these concepts within the whole organization, but then probably 2 to 5 years for them to actually have the entire flip of where they're all working at that complete paradigm shift. But then they will see, as you've said, once you've got the passion project in place, the money will follow. But most people
Mhm.
think of the money first and then the passion, and they do like the token, oh, we're having recycling days on Friday, or we donate to the homeless, or we do other things. But those are token
Mm.
like gestures of virtual signaling, whereas this would be something of where you're actually doing this together as the entire organization that stands for that. And then I think when people work for organizations that they feel are aligned with the goals that they are also in line with, they feel better about themselves too, because they also feel like they're aligned with the mission, as
Yeah.
opposed to having to be some sort of a cutthroat business person that's an asshole. Because I know the ones that I've worked with in the past, I know there's certain people that have perpetrated things against me or written me up for stuff that's not even accurate. And I can guarantee you those people have to have a rectifying with their own self, as to like, what am I doing? But a lot of people will sacrifice their soul for a paycheck and they don't really care.
No, absolutely. And there are so many benefits to switching over to that kind of a model, because once you get that fear out of the system, you become healthy as an individual, all
Yep.
of on its own, because now you have a sense of pride. And I think a lot of people look at these types of organizations, and there are these types of organizations out there. You have Blush Cosmetics, for example. You have Puka Teas, and there are other companies that have elements of it, not quite doing it all the way out. But once you start working, people are going to feel pride in what they're doing, and people are going to look at, well, you member of some cult or something. But it's uh, when you're part of a movement as opposed to part of a company, then you want to tell people about it. You become a, I described myself the other day as a business evangelist, uh, and it's you become an evangelist for what you believe in, and then people start connecting with themselves more because they will start to understand what they are authentically about. It's not, I got to get a job. No, sorry. My parents have said I need to get a good job, whatever
Mm-hmm.
the hell that is, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And that good job then pays money, so I can buy my house and feel secure, quotation
Mm-hmm.
marks, unless you're just doing the recording on audio. And it's, but once you're in a passion project, if people, if salaries need to go down, then everybody lowers their salaries. You take the pain together. It's because it's about keeping the organization going, because the mission is more important than the individual parts. But because you have that passion, you also try to protect everybody equally. So it's, the benefits are very they're quite numerous, and it's, you can just go in on the supply line, for example, and just say, okay, our mission is this, therefore we need these types of suppliers, and you will start to put in controls into your system. There's quite a few situations over the past few years where companies have been found out to use these child labor factories or slave labor factories in China,
Mm-hmm.
um, and all they do is like, oops, we didn't know. It's like, how did you not know? Oh, it's too far removed from our point of sales. Well, that's a cheap excuse. You know, I don't buy it. You need to know where it's coming from. So now, instead of using all of these middlemen, go there yourself and make sure that it's fulfilling the criteria that you have
Mm-hmm.
for the end product, because the end product will at the end of it have the energy that is put into it from the very start. So if
Mm-hmm.
you have good energy put into it, it's going to write itself. It's going to sell itself, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, and actually, Marcus, again, that I was interviewing the other day, he took quite a strong stance on it. they make tombstones in China, and one of the things he does, he controls the manufacturing. He owns the manufacturing, and this problem with silica dust, so it goes down into the lungs and basically wrecks the lungs, right? So he implemented from the very get-go that these safety measures for the workers. Now he tries to force them, but they don't want to wear them because they're uncomfortable. And there's a cultural thing as well. Their society is so dangerous outside, so them getting a little silica in their lungs, they feel that's kind of it's a non-issue. But he said, any company, any CEO who allows this stuff to happen in their organization is a murderer. You are responsible for another person's death because of your negligence or your inability or your unwillingness to take responsibility. So he said, it is, as a business owner and a business leader, this is my responsibility, and I need to make sure it is safe and moral and ethical all the way on to the consumer. And I tend to agree with that. And I think that's part of, we have those morals in our homes and in our society. You don't go out and, kill someone on the street. I'm sure the CEOs don't do that. So why do they allow that to happen? Because it's too far removed. So if you can instill to them that they have a responsibility, then you can instill this part of the passion too.
Well, and that's something where I think that, they did the non-GMO project in the United States. And I know, like, for example, in Germany, I remember in the 80s, they did the umweltschutzfreundlich, which was the, like naturally friendly, where you had the recycled toilet paper. And, a lot of people who actually do make those steps to be able to make sure that from the beginning to end, that those things are actually accurate. And so if you have the non-GMO project, you can also have that fair trade label, or you could also state specifically that, that no trafficked or labor or forced labor was used in the manufacturing of your stuff. We did that with PETA, with other things, with animal testing that said, no animal testing on these cosmetics. So I think those are also things that can be put into place. We have about a couple more minutes. I know that you had the UPP, and that's definitely probably another conversation, but what I really love, just to kind of recap on what you're talking about, is that I think having had a spiritual awakening and then being able to allow all this stuff into conscious business, the best part is that when someone hires you to come into the organization, they get the best of both worlds. So you're seeing that from the perspective of that traditional work environment, but then also from this different paradigm shift. And I love the fact that you talked about the fact that you really take things apart, because the people that are engineers, oftentimes that's exactly what they need to do. I know my father was never good in academics, but when he was 11, he basically went to a junkyard and he got all the parts from the junkyard to be able to make a Model A Ford. And at 11 years old, he put the completely thing together, put giant fat mag wheels on the back of it, and made himself a dragster. So, when you're 11 years old and you can do something like that, so maybe you don't get a good grade in English, but if you can put a car together, those are different forms of intelligences. So, pulling all those pieces apart, et cetera, to see how things work, it allows that your mind works in a particular way, because then once you've disaggregated the data, then you can put it back together in a creative and other way that other people might not have considered before. So I think that the beauty of what you have to offer is that you have a fresh pair of eyes that comes from a completely different perspective. But if someone says, you don't get me, again, you're not a Tibetan monk that has a long beard and just sat out, in a cave for 25 years saying, hey man, I want to come in and help your corporate structure, but I have no idea about corporate structure. You know all about it, but you can bring all those elements towards it as well. So that's something of where I think that will also be a very strong selling point in being able to acquire your services.
Well, I think Einstein puts it quite well. You can't solve the problem from where the problem was created. So we have to look at where we want to be and what we want the solution to be, and that will then unravel how we actually do it. So that's really I'm coming from the new paradigm and going backwards to see how did we solve it,
Well, and I love that because I think that, especially being able to now work with the, the Ferrazzi Greenlight Foundation and things like that. I also see that there will be, one of the things I feel like is important is that because your last name is Swedish, people need to understand it's Christopher Lemke, not Lemke or Lemmy or
German.
whatever people want to say, etc. So that Christopher Lemke is going to be something that is, it's going to be world renowned as a name. And so just putting those Christopher circles, just bubbling those all over the planet. And in addition to that, also that, that maybe certain businesses might state that they've been Lemkified or, something else like that. In the sense of where, you put your special touch on it. And then people look at this particular organization, they're like, wow, that organization is like thriving and it's like mushrooms just popping all over the place. What's happening? And they're like, yeah, we got Lemkified.
Yeah.
It was a structure that came in and it just completely changed it from the ground up. So I'm super excited to watch all of that unfold because I know that's coming in the, in the near future.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's that there is profit in it too for companies that take that path. So it's
Right.
it's not costs only, it's there's profit. But there's pain and change as well. So prepare for that.
But pain doesn't always have to be violent or torture either.
Oh
Pain can
God, no.
also just be, it can be, as they say, mildly uncomfortable or a little bit annoying or possibly there could be a little irritation, but it
Have you
doesn't have to
have you
be
been to Britain lately or
exactly. Exactly. All right. Well, thank you so much. It's been a lovely interview. I know the panel has been speaking about things that they're absolutely delighted for your wisdom, etc. So I know that your message is resonating with a lot of people. So thank you so much, Christopher, for being the guest to be able to be here at the Best You London Expo and onward and upwards for your journey and light ahead. And it's so fun just to be, along on this parallel journey with you. It's phenomenal. And it's every day. It's like it's not, wow, look, it just happened. Woo, isn't this cool? And next, okay, bring it on.
Yeah, wouldn't have it any other way. And it's highlight of the weekend to be here with you, Barbie. So appreciate it.
Oh,
Thank you for having me.
my pleasure. All right, Karen, if you turn off the record button, that would be lovely. Thank you so much for hosting. Appreciate it.